At that time, I think the Munich ecosystem had around 1 billion of invested, I would say, capital in general, mostly venture capital in startups. And the whole ecosystem set out to have, let's say, around 10 billion. So 10x growth in 10 years.
So in this episode, we talked to the director of the Venture Lab of the Built Environment at TUM. For those of you that may not know, TUM stands for Technical University of Munich. It was founded in 1868 by then King Ludwig II of Bavaria. And since then, it's really grown to be one of the prime technical universities in the world, boasting many Nobel Prize winners among its alumni and its current faculty. Now, what makes TUM Venture Lab interesting is that it comes out of a partnership between TUM and UnternehmerTUM. And as a side note, UnternehmerTUM has been voted 2 times in a row by the Financial Times as the primary startup hub, or let's say incubator accelerator in Europe. The Venture Labs decided to split at the time into 12 verticals, and the one we focus on today is that of the built environment. Startups coming out of these Venture Labs have managed to raise many millions of euros in pre-seed Series A round funding. And therefore, we venture today to understand what makes the Venture Labs and the Munich ecosystem more broadly so interesting. Stay tuned.
Máté, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, hi Andrea. Thanks for having me and giving this opportunity to show and explain what we do at the TUM Venture Labs.
Absolutely, it's really a pleasure. And actually, I think that's a good segue to the first question I wanted to explore with you today, because maybe for some people in our audience, they're not familiar with what a venture lab is. So can we start with just explaining to us, what is TUM Venture Labs?
So we can start with the first part of the name TUM, which stands for Technical University of Munich, which is one of the leading technological universities in Europe and worldwide. They have had a very strong entrepreneurial agenda since 2000. And the TUM Venture Labs is basically a joint initiative between the Technical University of Munich and UnternehmerTUM. UnternehmerTUM has been one of Europe's leading entrepreneurship centers since being founded in 2002. So we are a joint venture between these two entities. There are parent companies, if you will, and the venture labs themselves are focused on specific topics. One of them is built environment. I'm the director for this space of activities, if you will, meaning that teams and startups who have their market focus and technology relevant for the built environment space are our primary candidates. And you could consider us basically as an early stage incubator, if you will. That's our main focus of, let's say, formats and activities. And we have certain alumni or affiliates who are a bit further down the road, benefiting more either from accelerator formats or, let's say, our broader network.
Got you. I mean, there's a couple of interesting things to unpack there. What happened in the 2000s that triggered this realization at TUM that there was a need to, stimulate an entrepreneurial environment at the university?
I would have to quote loosely certain details, so those are the followers. We'll have to look up the exact numbers and names. TUM's president at that time, for whatever reason, had a clear intention of establishing this entrepreneurial track. And at that time, Helmut Schöneberger, who has been since then the CEO of UnternehmerTUM, was finishing more of like a research track at TUM, but in the direction of entrepreneurship. And to my knowledge, he had a research stay at Stanford, who had at that time or already at that time have something like an incubator accelerator format. So it was basically an inspiration from Stanford plus an initiative from TUM Munich, from that time president, plus the support of Susanne Kletten, one of the heirs of the BMW owner families. And through this initiative, that was the trigger point 2002, founding UnternehmerTUM. And almost 20 years later with the Venture Labs, I would say, again, the new president of TUM Munich, Helmut Schöneberger, CEO of UnternehmerTUM, and some other people realized that the Munich startup ecosystem would strongly benefit from a deep tech mandate incubator format, really specific on certain topics. And that's when the TUM Venture Labs, let's say, came in question and the initial steps were set. And now we have almost 5 years of experience with the new format, the new legal entity in this space.
Gotcha. So now let's zoom in a little bit to the venture lab, specifically on the built environment. So I was doing some research before our episode, and I actually found it really interesting. Like there aren't a lot of venture labs, or let's call it incubators, university incubators, with a specific focus on the built environment. From my research, actually, I think you're the only one in Europe and one of the very few in the world. So what was the conviction, at the time when the venture labs are being set up that made the founders believe we need a specific track for the built environment?
I think in general, this topic focus is not so common. So most entrepreneurship centers will be structured around incubator formats or accelerator formats or both. So many of them either operate in batches or something along that line and not being topic focused. Many entrepreneurship centers do have their own trends and focus points, let's say loosely, but this is not always reflected in the way that they operate. The venture labs format and why we're structured in labs is exactly to support a deep tech mandate and realize that support certain areas of deep tech, whether it's biotech, food agriculture, robotics, software, built environment, and we have 12 of our labs. You have to have some A, topic expertise, and B, topic specific network. And this was, I think, one of the founding premises of the TUM Venture Labs to say, okay, the built environment is one of these. As you said, to my knowledge, also worldwide and Europe-wide, there are not so many who have either the construction tech focus or construction tech plus property tech plus some of the annexed labs. And let's say that the biggest strength, I think, additional to this of the TUM Venture Labs is, although each lab has the lab-specific focus, we strengthen each other. So it means that if teams in our space, the built environment, have a technology stack rooted in robotics or have a technology stack in software AI, and we have some other typical cases, then you also have this cross-lab support on your technology stack, or you may want to explore, let's say, market entry in a related topic, then built environment is still your primary lab. One of the other labs may provide you, let's say, the springboard or the entry towards another specific network.
So if I was a founder, right, and I were to start day zero at the TUM Venture Lab in built environment, what support, what services would I get?
So we have very, very early phase teams, right? So we have teams who may have, let's say, impulse, I would call it, plus they have some background in, let's say, civil structure engineering, or they're software engineers exploring our space. And they would say they should have a founding team. It means we typically talk to groups of 2 people to be eligible for being a candidate first and then become a member. So you should have a team, you should have an interest and some prerequisites as far as entrepreneurial knowledge and activities. To fulfill our deep tech mandate, you should have enough, let's say, scientific or topic specific background for the built environment. And you should have, let's say, at least a rough product idea, market idea, so where we can help you start out, right? So these are some, I would say, more or less loose prerequisites to become a candidate. And of course, the more you have, the more we can support you, because you have to come out of the vagueness and just having an intention to have something tangible. But we have, I think, a mixture of, let's say, students finishing their master thesis. We have certain researchers who want to come out of the research mode at the PhD level and see if they can have a spin-off to their science, or let's say some kind of product that they have been working on. And we have also some people who have come back from the corporate world and looking into founding their own companies. Now, you also asked the question how we can help. So the first and foremost is exactly to give feedback on your idea, on your team. Is it ready enough to embark on a journey of really focusing on your startup, right? Is it just a loose hobby, or is it more than that? Then we can really help you and you can make the best out of our system. And our ecosystem will provide certain, I would say, educational formats. So we have this educational mandate, if you will, in the sense that we can have workshops and educational activities on what kind of traits and activities are you expected to have as a founder. How do you formulate your product or service to see, do you have a market for it or not? So everything from, let's say, team internal dynamics towards more like, what is relevant for the market? Do you actually have a problem that it's valuable to solve? How you can solve it? Who's willing to pay for you solving it? We have certain, let's say, information set sessions on whether it's on investment and how to pull in funds, how to talk to investors, how to tap into governmental funding, at least in Germany at European level, and all kinds of these topics that are relevant in an early phase. And we will also refer to our partner network. So UnternehmerTUM we consider as one or the main partner network and their own badge format on various topics. We have also other incubators and accelerators who we work with or we are in contact with. Last but not least, we have a very strong network of corporates, investors, and also trade fairs. So whether a team may have a benefit and let's say is looking for some kind of corporate contact towards a pilot project, or some investors may offer in early phase some kind of coaching, whether it's how do you pitch, how does your pitch deck look like, right? So preparing teams to the next steps which are relevant, or with trade fairs, and this is also a typical example, how to place yourself at a trade fair, so to say, how to make the best out of it. And here we have certain partnerships with fair trades where we will try to help teams get a good spot, get involved in other activities, like let's say an innovation competition. And these, I would say, are the most typical formats and benefits that teams could take from the built environment lab. Let's say intensity of help and variety of help is very comparable in between labs.
What I've learned from my time working in the corporate world is that teams are typically most successful, right, when they have incentive alignment. So when I hear you speak, obviously as a founder, right, the founder's ultimate goal is to build ideally a successful big business that has impact and provides value for their customers and also value generation for themselves. What are the lab's ultimate KPIs? And how do they align, with the founder?
The main KPI or the main number that was brought into discussion when the Venture Labs was founded in 2020, at that time, I think the Munich ecosystem had around 1 billion of invested, I would say, capital in general, mostly venture capital in startups. And the whole ecosystem set out to have, let's say, around 10 billion. So 10x growth in 10 years. So that's one of the KPIs that kind of guides the ecosystem per se. Now you can argue whether it is the invested value or the number of startups in absolute number. So there is a bit of a discussion what is more realistic and what is how you focus on one or the other. So this kind of spills over on a lab side. For us, it's easier, at least for now, to measure how many teams we do have, how many of them are active. And of course, if somebody has a publicly announceable funding round, that's something that also flows in, right? So we do hover around these numbers of the amount of teams, the amount of new teams, right? How much do we grow? So it's more nuanced than just these two numbers, but I think absolute number of teams and the growth, how many teams do we support and how much funding flows into these teams, they are valid metrics.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand also what you mean, because imagine a company's bootstrapped and they end up having like €1 billion in revenue, and it's still a huge success, but it doesn't hit your KPI. So obviously it's nuanced. It makes sense. Yeah, cool. So then, what about if you can share, of course, what are some of the biggest successes that have come out of the Built Environment Venture Lab so far?
The Built Environment Lab has, I think, kind of two topics. One is more software related, and then the other is more, let's say, hardware and robotics related, right? One of our alumni teams is Kevazo, and they have robotic solution, basically a lift bot helping the scaffolding. So this is really something on the construction side, and not only the hardware part, but also the data analytics. We have Emidat, who basically have this electronic product labeling, right? Of how to see or how to analyze the life cycle and impact of your products and supply chains. So they have been, I think, one of the more recent, very tangible success stories. And if I'm not mistaken, they're at Series A funding currently. And they were strongly mentored by my predecessor, Tobias Furch, and also the colleague Christos Sansaros. So I think that is already one of the success stories which better represents the TUM Venture Labs as a format and the built environment space. More recently, we had Alago, one of our current team and member. They basically have an AI-based solution to give a bit more intelligence and automation as far as certain activities on the construction site is not something related to robots, but it's more related to the processes on the construction sites. They recently had a successful pre-seed round, and I think their journey is pretty representative of what can be expected in the TUM Venture Labs built environment. Within 2.5 years, a motivated team of individuals comes in. They're the founders. They have a rough idea. They have the good attitude. They benefit from multiple of our formats, and within 2.5 years, they can get to a successful pre-seed seed financing. And then they probably will become an alumni in the sense that we will refer them to accelerator programs. We will try to help them with the appropriate network so that they scale properly. But I would say this kind of goes out a bit of our core activities, at least for now. But I think these three examples kind of also reflect very well the transition from TUM plus UnternehmerTUM, and now let's say the third part and our main part with the deep tech mandate with the Built Environment Lab.
Congratulations to the Alago team, but also to you guys for helping them along the way. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Maybe then let's take a step back a little bit from the venture lab and let's look more holistically at the Munich ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I'm like an ambitious founder and you and I meet in an elevator. What would be your elevator pitch to me to say, hey, come to Munich, the Munich ecosystem has something special to offer?
Well, look, we are basically, meanwhile, very well known due to our affiliation with TUM. I think the technical expertise, the deep tech mandate is there, so we can provide a lot of technical help, although teams typically have it. And within the big ecosystem and also our direct colleagues, we just have very, very valuable expertise in many fields, from funding to team building to how to attract and discuss with potential clients and investors. And this is pretty unique in Munich, in Europe, and in certain topics, I would say also globally, right? And Financial Times had a certain ranking with regard to our ecosystem and many other entities, which I don't want to glorify, but it is a statement of the strength of the ecosystem, and we do have a key role in this.
Makes sense. Now, to be a little bit devil's advocate, actually yesterday I was having a conversation with a friend who had a company, a startup actually in Germany, and he was telling me how he ended up, the business was doing pretty well, but they ended up having some challenges and they decided to just close it. And just closing it, he was telling me, cost them 4,000 euros just because of the processes in Germany are so bureaucratic. And, Germany's often been touted as, the engine of the European economy. And right now it's not going through the best time. What do you think are some of the missing ingredients now to see some new, interesting, exciting companies coming out of Germany?
So maybe I would come not from the legal and technical side, but more from the science and research side, right? Europe and particularly Germany has been traditionally very known for engineering excellence and scientific excellence. So I think that's still there. There's no question that the knowledge is there, that the universities are good and the research entities are good. The numbers kind of show that if you have spin-offs, many of them tend to migrate outside of Germany for various reasons, and we will come back to that. So the good news is the technical excellence, the research knowledge is there. The challenge is how to first and foremost motivate researchers, research institutes, professors, such that the entrepreneurship track is a valid track, not only the academic track, and not only then hopping to a very good corporate job, right? That there's also somewhere in between. So we do make a lot of effort, and we will have new formats and activities on how to reach out to these people. We call it, let's say, more or less our sciencepreneurship agenda, right? How to get to scientists who may have a good potential to become entrepreneurs as far as towards the scientific research and engineering community, who would, let's say, traditionally not be your typical entrepreneurs. The built environment and construction maybe is a bit different because civil engineers and architects do traditionally tend to come out of their studies and research and found a company. Maybe not the typical startup that you would think of, but there are many engineering offices providing consultancy and services, right? So I think as far as engineers and architects, the premise of entrepreneurial thinking is not so bad. It's more about, okay, are you going to start your next consulting and planning company, which is fine, but that's not a startup per se. in the sense of being focused on growth and basing your, let's say, unique selling point on a strong technological advancements. That would be, let's say, the deep tech. So if I combine deep tech and strong scalability and potentially an impact which goes clearly beyond local, that would be a startup and not a typical company, right? So the sciencepreneurship mandate is one. The other is this deep tech startup mandate, and this is towards our communities, which are near to us. And what you are hinting towards is definitely the European and the German ecosystem as far as regulations, as far as financial vehicles and possibilities, which were to support this strongly scalable deep tech mandate and founders who embark on this journey. And that's probably homework which is not only for us as a TUM Venture Labs, but definitely politics and anyone who has a say in regulation. As you rightfully noted, many of the legal processes are very time consuming, cumbersome, and also cost a lot. And there we just need a lot more speed so that investors who would like to invest have an easy journey in doing so, and also startups who need investments to survive don't have such a big overhead, neither in time nor in money. So that's, I think, a very big discourse. To my knowledge, the current government has a clear agenda of how to support it. I think the intentions are good. We'll have to see how it actually reflects in the day-to-day doing. I'm, let's say, a bit still open to be flashed by how it will look, but the intentions are there, the discourse is there. I think the pain is known by many actors, so I'm really hoping that the regulation part will change enough that it really supports our mandate as far as deep tech, as far as sciencepreneurs, and really helps new startup founders.
Okay. All right, fingers crossed. We all want to see more exciting companies come out of Europe, right? And maybe not be founded here and then move out to the US, which is often the case.
Definitely.
So then thinking about the perspective of the founder, by being in the venture lab, I'm assuming you often observe, right, especially at this earliest stage for founders, a lot of founder firsts. And what I mean by that is, the first time maybe the founder has to raise capital, the first time they have to hire someone, maybe even the first time they have to fire someone or find a paying customer. These are all really important milestones in a founder's entrepreneurial journey. What have you observed? What are some of the trends around these firsts in terms of where founders maybe make mistakes that, are often recurrent?
Look, there are exactly various examples on how to relate to these points. And you're totally right. Those who, let's say, either come from the corporate world and have certain experience either with team management at least and certain activities related to financing, they probably can focus better and cut through, let's say, the nonsense or the noise and really take better decisions on the spot. We have certain, let's say, earlier career professionals or serial founders who are there you can also see the learning curve. So I would say, being a serial founder is not bad in many ways. If you learn from what didn't work out, it really gives you clear focus. And as you said, the first time founders, it's really nice because they bring a lot of enthusiasm, right? Which is good, and naivety in a good sense. It really depends on the learning curve and how coachable, learnable, or teachable are you. Not that we want to indoctrinate or teach somebody to an unuseful degree, but we do have the formats, the coachings that should help you to reflect and basically be open to change. And probably being open to change, being coachable, being reflective and ready to pivot is one very, very key aspects and characteristics that you either should have or should nurture to have. Because what is certain that you will have a lot of reasons why you have to change something. Something doesn't work out in your team, you have to react to that. Whether it's trying to rebalance the, let's say, team chemistry and dynamics with the same people, or have to take a stronger decision and just face it that somebody has to leave the team, and then you should also be respectful to that person who has to leave the team, or vice versa. To questions whether you have, let's say, an idea client in a pilot project and later not how to deal with something like that, right? You don't want to burn bridges or leave a bad experience behind that may or may not hurt your client because you're big enough, but might totally ruin your business, even if you have a small reputation that you cannot fulfill. Or, just facing that your initial idea and vision of a product or service is just not a fit, and being open to react on that. And in this sense, I think who really are open to react and adjust, they definitely have a very, very good premise. And many of them, let's say, so it's important not to have only fictitious and only abstract use of what you'd like to achieve. In sense, what does my ideal team look like? What does my ideal pilot project look like? What is the ideal product that I want to deliver? But really going out and testing it into the field. So really gather real world feedback, and each kind of, let's say, small unsuccessful happening is a learning that you should take. And this is what we see also from our, let's say, more experienced founders. And we have in the venture labs many people who have founded and built up companies. And it's always, the ability to be able to pivot and adapt and being out in the real world and testing your hypothesis in real settings. That's make it or break it. And I think those teams who have the attitude and readiness to do so, and also take the beating in good sense and learn from it, they have a lot better premise in succeeding later on.
I think another thing I've observed is that, but also from talking to people that have startups, the co-founder fit is really an essential ingredient, even earlier on, right? Do the founders have a similar vision? Are they aligned? But from my experience, I think it's extremely hard often to find a founder that is maybe as committed as you, to the cause and is willing to suffer with you in the trenches. So what advice you have for someone, let's say, who's very ambitious, maybe he's a really good technical founder, or has a really good deep specific sector understanding, but they don't have maybe the technical skills to build a solution, to find someone who is a potential co-founder candidate?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Talking from my experience, when I was a researcher and I was kind of wondering about the idea to either be a founder of something or to join a founding team or do freelancing, and I tested a bit of all these, you kind of never know where the good fit will be. Probably one advice is, just to be open, be out in your network, ask also just friends, just reach out to people, because in the end, your co-founder should be matching as a person. You will probably spend quite some time with them. And then, of course, there's the complementary aspect of strengths and weaknesses, right? Don't try to find a copy of yourself, but see what is necessary. So if you're a more technical guy, try to reach out to somebody who's more of a business guy, or vice versa. Those are the two key components early on. For example, UnternehmerTUM in 2016, 2017, when I was looking for something, because I was never inspired enough to found my own company, but I wanted to join a startup. They had, for example, a talent pool. They and our ecosystem do have certain networking events, either specifically also trying to help with matchmaking or indirectly. You just show up there, you see that there are people who are interested in the same topic and same format, and just talk to them. So being present just as a human being, talking about topics, talking about your needs, seeing if we have a specific format, or reaching out to us, because teams every now and then will really have like a clear opening and they're looking for, let's say, C-level, although it's like, a team of 3. But basically someone who will complement the founders round as a founder, co-founder, or something along those lines. Reach out to us, reach out to the networks which is existing and the formats in the ecosystem, and be open about it. I don't think there's a clear recipe on how to succeed or not succeed on this, but definitely the exposure or you exposing yourself and talking openly about this might really help. And I would not underestimate the strength of your personal network. In the end, my first startup who I kind of joined and helped them with a technical study, it was one of, let's say, through these matchmaking formats or talent pools, if you will. It was fine. The startup itself didn't succeed, but there was a bit of good connection also afterwards. And the second one, interestingly, came through a friend who we basically had like a shared apartment with a couple of years ago. So just reach out, to the people in your network who you might be a roommate or a flatmate with, or a colleague in your studies. And that might bring you a longer way, because you at least have the premise of knowing that person. And I think that's the foundation for trust. Otherwise, we should have to build up from zero with respect to someone who you don't know at all. So if on this premise with trust, through the network, through the matchmaking formats, through your network, I think there's a good chance you'll find something. And otherwise, we will also try to help. We don't have, I think, a clear, let's say, there's a recurring format to do so specifically, more indirectly through our networking events and simply reaching out to us.
Sure. Fair enough. So then just to send us towards the closure. Where would you like the Venture Lab to be, in 5 years' time?
So we have to reflect just a bit. It's around 5 years since the Venture Lab started, and the Built Environment Lab was one of the first ones. Most labs are characterized by a very strong growth in the sense of, just establishing formats, establishing your team, establishing strategic partnerships, establishing sponsors, which have clearly defined the first 5 years, and slowly some learnings come in, right? As you said, we have some internal KPIs, or even indirectly you feel, okay, some formats and topics may have been fitting for the previous 5 years, or just you already have a feeling where you could improve or where you could go towards. For me personally, I bring experience in traditional civil and structural engineering in let's say in the application part. So I would say my strength is construction tech. I also bring around 15 years of digital engineering, so simulation, data science, software, supercomputing. And I think along this intersection, there's still a lot to be happened. Whether we're talking about software tools for the planning and design, or if we go deeper, and that's where the big chaos is happening, still construction project management, construction site management, and that will have a strong, or does have a strong software component. We will have a lot of components either with new types of robots and sensors, or perhaps even more retrofitting existing machines with sensors, actuators, controllers, right, to go to more like autonomous building. Germany and Europe already has a lot of constructions which exist, and not all of them need to be or should be basically demolished and rebuilt. So we will need retrofitting, reuse, repurposing technologies. I think that's very interesting because it's a pretty undefined path, I at least think technologically. So I would say these are some of the trends I would like me and our lab and our team go in more and more, and hopefully we can provide new formats, new corporate partners, such that we can draw in a new generation of startups and entrepreneurs. Reuse, repurpose, a very big topic, and how we can tap into it by technological solutions and startups. The whole digital and virtual, let's say, product development, construction site management, that would be very exciting to see. A lot of existing construction software will probably have to refresh the user experience and interface totally. So still a lot will happen on this, let's say, digital automation robotics segment. And what is, I think, still something that will have or can have a big impact, although it's more hardware heavy, is basically the area of new materials. So either new materials in the sense probably a new type of combination, right? Hybrid, wooden hybrid, or you may have some solutions to replace the part of cement or improve concrete production. So everything which is related to material science is very exciting. There I'm kind of looking forward. We do have some other labs who are more, let's say, technically suited for that, whether it's with regard to manufacturing or sustainability topics. And I'm really looking forward to collaborate on this entire material science and material life cycle with other labs. As I said, construction tech, property tech, digital twins, operational digital twins, thermal digital twins. Those will be surely big topics. I'm curious how the market reacts and how we can motivate teams to embark on this journey.
That's really ambitious, and you obviously want to touch upon all the key themes. Hopefully you have at least one unicorn, right, in one of these subtopics that's come out of the Venture Lab.
Look, I would take always the unicorn.
Pretty satisfactory.
Look, the unicorn I think is a good motivator. Again, I don't want to idolize it due to various reasons, right? So if we see a couple of unicorns, nice. So looking back and having 3 to 4 unicorns would be great. Having let's say, motivated the new generation of entrepreneurs, that's I think the key theme. And if we can build up a sustainable operational model for the venture lab, or let's say a scalable operational model in the sense that we can foster more teams, we can foster more topics, then that is definitely the premise for moving all the necessities and, let's say, lack of innovation or struggle of innovation in the construction space better. But it is basically being realistic enough to do the groundwork to enable that, and the more success stories, the merry, right? We will be happy to have success stories and share them.
Makes sense. Perfect. Máté, is there anything else that you would like to talk about or highlight about the work of the Built Environment Venture Lab that we haven't talked about today?
Yeah, I mean, I have one topic is many people ask about, let's say, the operational model of the venture labs as a legal entity and let's say this non-profit oriented LLC format and how it works. So Basically, there's no membership fee for startups. We don't take equity from startups. We also don't provide direct investment to startups. So all that comes through our network. I highlighted bits and pieces of our selection criteria, so people are welcome to reach out. And we do have, let's say, requests and contacts, typically from Austria, Switzerland, Netherlands, Estonia, and everybody is basically welcome. We don't have, in this sense, clear exclusivity neither with TUM or UnternehmerTUM, although many of our current teams, 70 to 80% still come out of the Munich ecosystem, or strictly speaking, TUM and UnternehmerTUM. So that's kind of just understand how we work. And basically we finance ourselves through governmental partnerships and corporate partnership, the latter being the bulk of it, just to have transparency of what we do. And this can be also read up on our website. Last but not least, we do have an interesting format. So those who want to get in touch with us and test a bit out this built environment and who we already have, let's say, as partners or network supporters, we do have a hackathon coming up on, let's say, digital topics and digital prototypes for architecture, engineering, construction, operations, which is a very exciting format. It has been held at TUM, like really university, a couple of years back. There was a bit of hiatus in between. And last year it was picked up again with the TUM Venture Labs and the guys from Open Source Construction in Zurich. This year we're co-organizing it with Groundbreakers from Stuttgart. So it's, I think, a very nice format. People are welcome to come as participants. Corporates are welcome to pose a challenge and support our cause in this sense. Network partners as well. So whoever has some kind of intention in dealing with innovation and talent in this space with this focused deep tech mandate, built environment, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, and I can also confirm I was at the hackathon last year. It was a lot of fun. So if you are interested in innovation in the built environment, I also encourage our listeners to do attend. Highly recommend.
Thank you. So we have already...
Thank you so much for the conversation today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Andrea. It's also good that you provided the user review for our format at the hackathon and looking forward to similar discussions on what we do. People are invited to reach out to us and let's keep in contact.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a nice